I still have people reaching out from time to time asking if I can talk more about chord progressions. I've made several videos that cover this territory, and I can link them in the description. But I thought it might be wise to just make a video where I try to make this one point very clear, which is just that Screamo is not really about the guitarist playing chords a lot of the time. And I think that's where a lot of confusion comes from, because when you're first learning how to play guitar, you tend to learn a lot of songs where the guitarist and the bass player and the band in general is just kind of like all playing the same root heavy chords at the same time. And that's very characteristic of a lot of like indie rock and pop punk music. You tend to hear a lot of these power chord progressions that are pretty simplistic, and they just go like... So one thing I would point out is that like a lot of this kind of music, you're giving every chord the same amount of time, you're just strumming through. There's not a whole lot of rhythmic variation being introduced by the guitar player. And I think really what's characteristic of Screamo and post-hardcore related genres is that there's a lot more rhythmic complexity to what the guitarist is doing, and they're not necessarily playing every single note in the chord. Both of those are concepts that are borrowed from jazz, essentially. You know, like jazz greats like Miles Davis, for instance, really insisted on avoiding what they called the butter notes, which is basically just notes that you don't need to include because they're implied or because they just kind of fatten the harmony unnecessarily, and then you kind of just hear nothing but root note. And if you're trying to draw out something that sounds a little bit more harmonically complex, you got to pay attention to rhythm for one. And another thing you have to pay attention to is just how you're constructing your chords across numerous voicings. So if you are the guitar player in a post-hardcore project or a Screamo project, you really don't need to be playing the root of the chord a lot of the time. And particularly if you're going for something that sounds more sparse or maybe chaotic, you know, you can be playing much higher up. So for instance, I could be playing something like a... And I'm not really relying on the low string there. Maybe the bass player would be playing something different than what I'm playing in terms of my root notes, or similar, and maybe they're moving around a lot more. By me playing higher up, I'm giving them more space to introduce more complex lower harmony as well. Let's go back to that like power chord riff that I was just playing. Let's say I'm playing these chords. So one way we can change it up is just by adding extensions, right? Like a... We can also just play with the timing of the individual chords and make something that's just a little bit more varied in terms of when chords happen and how much time we're giving to each chord. And I think that makes a huge difference in constructing our progression. So for instance, I could do something like a... So I'm making use of the same chords there, right? But I'm adding in a little bit of an octave thing. I'm giving the first chord more time, and I'm giving the last chords even less time. By changing it up a little bit here and starting chords in different places, maybe adding in some syncopation, I'm introducing the kind of variation that makes it more characteristic, more riffy, and moves it away from that kind of strummy, pop punky, indie rocky sound into something that's got more edge to it, that sounds more like rock and roll, that sounds more like Screamo, that sounds more like post-hardcore. So I've said it before, but I'll say it again. Like, you want to treat the bass and the guitar and the band kind of like the left and right hands on the piano. And the left and right hands on the piano when you're playing a song aren't doing the same thing. The left hand is more in charge of the lower harmony, which is playing a lot of the important bass notes that tells you how the progression works. And the right hand is embellishing that and adding all kinds of extensions and complex harmony on top of that and moving a lot faster typically than the left hand is moving. So you really just need to move away from this idea that like, I'm gonna play a power chord, the bass player is gonna play the root of whatever power chord I'm playing, and we're just gonna kind of like give everything roughly the same amount of time. Try and play something that's on the offbeat. If you're really struggling with this idea, I really can't recommend enough trying to spend some time learning songs that you like, that you feel like have good riffs in them, so you get a sense of what it means to play something that's like a little bit more rhythmically varied or a little bit more harmonically varied. So yeah, I mean, I hope this helped clear some of that up, and good luck trying to write some more complicated progressions.